We're trying to use these compounds to finally tell us the difference that we need to make. So if you're dealing with liver toxicity, um, whenever you cirrhosis of the liver, if you're just having a lot of blood issues, blood poisoning issues, heavy metal poisoning issues, it's going to have an effect on the liver system, whether you feel it or not at this moment. And this is one of those few compounds that if you start taking it routinely and you're afraid or you have a fear of that issue being in the body, this is that protection system to put over top of yourself. Because at least agaricus is going to go through the digestive system, give the right information to those hepatic cells, and actually create better functionality in the overall liver system. Gout condition, indigestion, psoriasis, all of these have potential for being, affected by a compound that's, any of these beta-glucans are coming from agaricus.
And where's agaricus?
Agaricus is inside the immune matrix.
Okay.
Just as a note, that makes a liver transplant, and I guess your liver's so far gone that she needs one. She's young, and I don't know what she did in her life, what caused that, but have you seen people or worked with people where their liver was regenerated? Because I was kind of understanding that you can't regenerate your liver.
Every system in the body regenerates. And yes, I have worked with people who technically had long-standing either Hep B or Hep C infection, and once their viral count came down to where it was more manageable, their liver technically went back to normal operation. Their enzymatic levels platformed or plateaued out to where they were actually considered normal. It's rare, and it causes, like the idea is your lifestyle has to drastically change. And there is potentially something there that that you got to look at as some kind of instigator. It could be something as simple as water source as a child, or living near EMF towers, or something that you would never think as being the main contributor to the shutdown of the organ. But there's obviously a contributing factor. So there is something to that, but there is always the ability, as long as something's connected to the body, to be enhanced in its overall function. Extreme alcoholics who stop drinking and start being healthy regenerate their entire cirrhotic liver. They have full recovery, full recovery. So for someone who talks about the idea that you can't regenerate is literally a solid epigenetic or non-epigenetic Western medicine, full practicality. And honestly, transplants are expensive. So there's a lot of doctors who love to just push that concept as the only solution, instead of like, well, no, really, if we put compounds in your body that would do the function of your liver and give your liver the time off it would need, those cells will start to help. Will start to clean themselves. Will start to work in a much better function. Again, I'm the person who will always tell you, where there's a will and hope, there's a way. So we just have to go through and see that again, and there are actually clinical studies that have shown this, to where someone could walk into an office and say, well, what about this particular study done in this particular country for healing the liver with this medicinal compound? What do you say? And going through the system of understanding. So, anything that might have shut down that liver, there are, even in this paperwork here, places where you can see that they've gone in and actually used the agaricus leachii to fix, full hepatitis, affected individuals. So that's liver dysfunction. That's all it is. But it is one of those where you kind of have to see, and people have to understand going in there and trying to make this work. It's not as simple as, oh, add agaricus and it's done. That's one of those big things I think that's tough, because the Western medicine system thinks, oh, I gave the right prescription, it solved the problem, that person's now healed. That's usually rarely the case in any medicine system, but definitely in the healing, in the holistic healing system. There's a lot.
Affecting the entire blood system.
The whole system.
So it helps other organs as well?
Oh yeah, once the stress of your blood is brought down, heart issues, brain issues, lung issues, kidney issues, everything else that's connected, muscle fatigue, fibromyalgia, arthritic condition, all of those will finally start to receive their benefit. So it is definitely an interesting way of looking at how to start healing for a person. Agaricon, very similar to Agaricus, but again, a little bit of this tree saprophytic style. It grows more in firs and pines, though, not like the chaga growing on birch. Again, this one's just starting to creep into the natural healing world, so we're just kind of understanding some of the basic compounds, what terpene molecules it's got, where the plant sterols are, but we are still seeing that there's a huge level of materials where Agaricon has been a part of our system for a couple thousand years. We've had at least some people working with the mushroom in different ways. The big thing I think that actually comes in here is that it's a really strong antiviral, antimicrobial. So that's one of the big benefits that we're seeing out of it. It's not processed very effectively. There's not a lot of people out there producing this particular mushroom. It's definitely one of those where it's more of this really hard, woody, very high fibrous material. So it's definitely something that either needs to be put through alcohol and made a tincture of, or boiled very excessively in order to unlock the actual material to get it out of the mushroom. So bacterial, viral, really good for anybody who's got a long-standing colon affected by diverticuli, H. pylori, anything where you have this highly aggressive but natural and human-contained viruses. When they overgrow, this is a safe way of actually cutting down those levels and actually getting it to where the body's much healthier and stabilized. So you don't want to be without E. coli or without H. pylori, without C. diff. Those bacterium are kind of a part of our digestive system. They work for us as long as they're kept in check. It's just when we take antibiotics or we have something causing a diverticuli, a pocket of irritation to form, that we see the overall breakdown of the colon system. So with Agaricon, this is one that we don't actually have in raw revelations yet. I don't see it very often. Again, it's extremely hard to come by. But it just depends on if you're a person who's really looking for that antiviral, antimicrobial sort of activity. It's another good mushroom to consider putting into because there are people who are producing. But this is again one of those to where better than antibiotics, working with the body, helping healing without hurting. Going back to the Hippocratic Oath and actually having doctors who follow it would be pretty interesting. But this is definitely one of those where as bacterium keep producing themselves to where they're antibiotic resistant, it's compounds probably coming from a plant like this that's going to be necessary in order to actually get any kind of ability to help the human system fight against it. So huge, huge benefits if we keep going in there and keep trying to understand what some of these plants, this particular mushroom, can do for us. We just don't even really know yet. They're just now being hunted and harvested and being brought in for testing in our system, and so we are getting deeper into a better understanding as to how they might have some sort of function for us. But, so Agaricon, antimicrobial. That's the connection we want to draw there. Agaricus, liver function, cellular regeneration, cancer healing. Definitely having some better operation for the system there. Chaga. There's an entire book on chaga right there above your head. That honestly, it's sort of one of these things that talking about chaga mushroom at all in a way that's not 8 hours long is tough because of how many different functions and how many different ways it can be good for your body. You can drink it, you can eat it, you can tincture it, you can do a lot of just interesting, fun stuff. But I would highly recommend at least anybody who's trying to heal any fatigue syndromes, long-standing infections, interesting, especially malignant or intracellular cancers that go through the body, through body tissues that aren't just true tumor functions. Chaga does a fantastic job on tumors, don't get me wrong. But the idea is a lot of other medicines don't go after cancers or cellular growths that actually are free-floating, or cancers, issues that are going in between cells. So it's one of the few that by drinking it, you can actually replace the water in your body with having some chaga property, and that can start to attack the areas where you're finding any kind of cellular issue or growth problems. So chaga is definitely one of these for people who are dealing with especially a lot of lung cancer issues, joint cancers, bone cancers, to where the bone marrow has been affected. I still would say that it's actually one of the better mushrooms for working against things like leukemia, lymphomas, and it still has all the same great functions for actually like a centered, isolated tumor. And I would almost call that easy for a chaga mushroom. The more difficult ones are the ones that are actually floating around the bloodstream. Everybody who's ever looked at chaga mushroom has literally said how amazing, wonderful, couldn't live without it type of research has gone on to it, from the Chinese to the Russians, Siberians, Paleo-Chinese. They all have this reverence for chaga. Even North American Inuit and a lot of the tribes of the Pacific Northwest understood what chaga was, how it should be used. They used it in a lot of great function. Now, with our understanding of it, one of the compounds that everyone needs to think about, the reason that this mushroom is so black is because it contains melanin. Melanin is the precursor for melatonin. Melatonin is the concept of what you use in order to actually maintain that good diurnal sleep cycle. If you've disrupted it through insomnia, sleeping pills, traveling, mold, whatever it has disrupted and created insomnia function, this is kind of the great way to start healing a lot of the sleep disorders, is to get good melanin concentrations back in the body so your body can convert melatonin. The other extreme compound that this gives us that's very unique to this plant is what's called superoxidase dismutase. When we were talking about the berries, we were talking about vitamin C as being an antioxidant, vitamin E being another antioxidant, forming the base of our antioxidant profile. Glutathione was one of the next steps up, and superoxidase dismutase is the highest order antioxidant produced inside our body. So when you're starting to eat chaga, drink chaga, then you're being able to raise that higher order antioxidant function. So when it comes to, again, cells that are locked up with too much toxicity, lack of blood flow, blood supply, causing stagnation, turning off the actual chemical signals that cause the cells to talk to each other, then this is really where you should kind of start. So again, it's just one of those like, it's the king of medicinal mushrooms. It is the one that does such strong, better function. It just depends a lot of times on how much you're going to drink or eat, and how consistent you can be with it, whether or not it's going to solve the problem. Yes?
Isn't melanin also the pigmentation in your skin?
Correct.
And how does that relate? Like if you take chaga, would it increase your ability to tan?
I kind of think that there's a little bit of that function that keeps me brown all year round. Instead of going into the summer and actually bright pinking and getting that heavy sunburn. Again, vitamin D is that secondary piece, but vitamin D controls the ability for melanin to be produced in the actual subdermis and getting it to where it actually sticks to the cells of your skin. So there is a definite connection there. And I do know people who have said, you know, listen, I have pictures of me from a year ago, and I've been drinking the chaga, and I'm darker, you know, like I just have a much darker complexion than my fair-skinned, you know, year ago self, to where melanin and melatonin was so low, and again, they usually complained high anxiety, no sleep function, bad digestion, all these things were a part of that old former system, and it created, again, this, the look of somebody too pale to have that good concentration. So yes, there is something to that. Betulinic acid is another one of these compound precursors. It's a very high level antioxidant and also works with the beta-glucan concept that we talked about with Agaricalaceae. So these beta-glutans, again, something about chaga that actually gets into your cells and starts to talk to the cells to say, if you're not a part of the system, if you're not a part of the team, it's time to get out. You know, we have a way of working this whole, concept. The betulinic acid is what will develop that apoptosis, and that concept where the cell decides, I'm not working in the right way, and will crush itself down and destroy itself and allow for it to go back into being broken apart.
Does that have to be brewed?
Yes. It's heat, water, boiling, all of that function better.
So you would put a teaspoon, tablespoon, whatever.
Whatever you like. In the water, get it as hot as you can, let it boil. The powderized material, again, doesn't require as much boiling, but like when we do our chaga tea here on the stove pot, we just have chunks of this chipped down, and it's literally sitting there simmering all day long. And that's the very standard medicinal way of using chaga, is for it to be in a constant simmer boil. No.
Something to throw down.
But
The chaga's talking.
chaga said, I'm here.
So you can't put this one
Mhm.
in the tea.
In a teapot, warm. Let it get warm. Yeah, let it boil. Again, if you're wanting more tea cut chaga, it's just chunkier. It looks like little pieces of activated
Do
charcoal.
you guys have that chunky?
We can, yeah, because we use it here to brew. We don't sell it like at the markets or anything, but we can do it to where you get the tea cut here.
Yeah.
Again, Polly? There's nothing broken back there, right?
Not that I could tell. I didn't see anything.
So the turpentines are another great thing that's happening, giving it this dark coloration. We found turpentines in the spores of the actual reishi, not so much in the actual growth factor of the reishi, but chaga has a tremendous amount of it because this growth actually concentrates that pretty heavily. Again,
Can you put the two together? Like
reishi and chaga, of course.
Okay.
Of course.
In a tea?
Yes. Yes, yeah, these can go directly into a tea right by themselves, and that's kind of the better way of utilizing them in the tonic elixirs, is getting that warm water, putting down a base of heavenly hot chocolate or coffee fix or immunity matrix or some pristine proteins, and just adding all of the good anti-inflammatory, good cellular healing compounds that are coming out of these mushrooms into
So really you can't really mix anything wrong.
You can't, except for putting 2 or 3 tablespoons of oil and MSM. That's the only thing you really shouldn't mix.
Oil and MSM?
Oil and MSM.
Why is that?
The liver activation along with the oil at the same time creates a little bit of overactivity inside the gallbladder and can cause a little bit of cramping or just indigestion. So your body will
So
release...
MSM and oil, no.
MSM and oil, keep those apart. And that's where the morning mix is kind of meant to be mixed with
By itself.
those other, you can add all the berries and do all that kind of great
Yeah.
stuff. It loves vitamin C, just not 4 or 5 tablespoons of coconut oil, the same thing.
And can you have the MSM and then 5 minutes later cut oil? Or
Sure.
How long do you have to wait?
I would say at least 15 minutes or so if you're going to be like, really slamming a whole bunch of oil right afterwards. Just give that system some time to recognize that there's 2 different operations occurring. And again, you just don't want to do anything that's actually creating indigestion in the stomach. That's just never going to be a good functionality. So we talked about SOD. There's a small portion in reishi, in especially the spores, 1,400. Like there's the Health Alliance here, 1,400 units per gram if you're doing reishi. The difference, of course, is that agaricus has 35,000. So this is the place to go for SOD. And this is one of the only foods that will donate SOD to the human body. Again, that's a very interesting concept that we have towards there's really not any other source that actually gives us as much. Agaricus, same thing, about 1,500 compared to 35,000 with chaga. So as we go through and kind of understand, again, overall benefits with chaga tea, I've not heard of anything in the body that doesn't get better when you start taking in chaga. But I have to say the same thing about reishi, and I'd almost say the same thing about agaricus, and I'd probably say the same thing about cordyceps. You know, like that's where these mushrooms are very interesting, how they literally do broad spectrum health change, and it almost, in a way, whatever is going wrong seems to get the function to start to change to work better for you when you just start eating any mushroom. So, and this can be literally white button mushrooms. Just eat 15 or so of those every evening, either raw or put them in a pan. Again, but mushrooms love to be cooked, heated, sauteed. But white,
Is it the regular ones like a
yeah, little white button mushroom, just literally.
Package you put it.
Exactly. Slice those guys up, put them in some butter, fry those things up. They literally have some of the highest containing beta-glucan counts, almost as much as even some of the high-end medicinals. They're not broad spectrum, but they're anti-cancer by themselves. Like, that's the most amazing thing to me, that literally...
What about the portobello? Those...
Portobello, not so much. Again, I think it gets too meaty, and then it just grows in ways that isn't the same as a lot of... And we just see... But the underside of the portobello, where the blacks contain, that black fleshy part, that's probably got a lot of these same compounds in it. I just don't think anyone's ever stopped to look at it and actually figured out that there's medicinals in portobello. But I mean, again, I have not found any mushroom to not contain some level of these compounds. It just may not be a very strong amount. Yes?
You mentioned in the beginning something about the ear mushrooms, wood ears.
Wood ears.
Do you know anything? Have you studied anything?
Yeah, wood ears are fantastic. Again, one of those that they actually do better than most is they give us a tremendous amount of silica. They do a fantastic job of giving us, again, some of those really interesting terpenes. They're harder to process than a lot of the other mushrooms that we have, so we don't see them really being anything other than tincture. And there is a lot of issues because we do see overuse of them creates a little bit of colon instability, so it can create a lot of diarrhea reaction. So that's one of those to where the wood ears are fine to be in a blend. If you're wild harvesting, then they're great to be putting into soups and things like that on a basis. Again, huge cautionary piece in this is if you don't know what a mushroom is, do not eat it. It's not worth it. There's literally, I don't even know, probably somewhere between half a dozen to maybe 10 accounts that I know of where a mushroom mycologist professor is found in the woods dead with a classroom of people around him because they all thought they had the right mushroom and it turned out to be something different and they all took a bite of it and it put them on, I mean, literally that fast. Oh yes, happens all the time. It's very interesting about mushrooms because the other thing is like a lot of times this one here, reishi, looks just the same as like two other mushrooms. It's just the fact that there's a certain oil compound that happens to shut down your liver or take off your nerve function or again, very interesting. Be very careful. So
You mean out in the
I know you're a wild harvester.
Yeah, I've been studying on mushrooms for several years, but one thing that's interesting is like the reishi is a polypore. It's in a class of mushrooms called polypores. Yep. And there's actually no mushrooms in the polypore variety that's toxic.
Toxic, correct.
So if you can tell what a polypore is, you can safely harvest.
Correct.
Polypore.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. But when it comes to lots of the tree fungus ones and a lot of the dead growth tree fungus ones, there's some that are literally so deadly that if you touch them, it's enough and you're gone. So there's one called it's called a death cap or black-footed monk, and literally if you're just around it, like you may not even realize it, you'll just sit down on a log, and if the liquid of it gets into your skin, it'll literally kill you like that.
Where does it exist?
Pacific Northwest. There's some areas in Europe that have a lot of those. The very interesting mushrooms like that actually do some some tremendous damage to people. again, what's funny is there actually is an essential oil that comes from that mushroom that's actually very health promoting, healthy. But to process it has killed more people over the last few hundred years because they have to touch the actual mushroom itself in order to get the oil out of it. So that's where it's kind of interesting. Average lifespan for a person who processes the black-hooded monk is about 7 or 8 years in their field. And then by then they've either somehow done something wrong, and it could be nothing more than that whole idea of like, you know, you're playing around, you go, oh, darn, and then you're done. Literally, I mean, that's how funny that whole compound is. Most of the initial monks were either lepers or eunuchs who'd been, you know, some sort of prisoner or castrated or something, and they were the ones where their lives were just for medicinal harvesting, and when they came across crazy stuff like that, I mean, it was okay for them to be like, yeah, whatever, we just lost some. Again, I'm sure there's something about the name of the black-hooded monk that probably has some correlation with the monks doing the harvesting for that particular one. So like I say, Chaga's just got a ton of amazing, functions. There's Pacific Northwest Canadian chaga, there's Siberian chaga, there's, chaga from lots of different places. The big thing is you just want to make sure that someone who's harvesting it is not allowing, you can tell how there's other molds and other funguses that have grown on top of this mushroom now that it's off the tree. So that's a big piece in terms of harvesting, that you kind of want to make sure that what you're taking in is a trustworthy sort. There's a couple recipes here for some really interesting, really fun drinks to kind of make with a chaga sort of base to it that I think a lot of people should be at this point in time in the class familiar with in order to begin to try to do some of this for yourself as well.
Chaga cappuccino.
So yeah, King of Medicinal Mushrooms. Like I say, David Wolf has his book, King of Medicinal Mushrooms, Chagas, all that wonderful power. Highly recommend reading it. It's amazing what that particular mushroom can do. That one froze up too. Come on, where's my technology? Why is it failing for me?
Some mushrooms.
Yeah, powered by mushrooms. I know, I told you it's going to be just full of them. Cordyceps. Cordyceps, if you're starting energy or exercise, looking for energy, if you're trying to get back into a running program and you're not an Olympic athlete, eat as much cordyceps as you possibly can. It will take the muscle fatigue down. It will cause for better oxygenation while you're running. Again, you just have to be very careful if you're in any kind of competing sport that actually will check for compounds that come out of the cordyceps mushroom. Again, huge issue in the 2008 or 2004 Olympics. That was where this actually got the most press, was it literally disqualified the entire Chinese long-distance running team. They were eating literally sometimes on the average 2 to 3 pounds of cordyceps a week. And it was making their run times impressive, very impressive. They were already fast, and it made them faster.
But they tested drugs. I mean, they said they were drugs.
This compound was, actually they tested clean, but the improvement they had was so large that they knew something was up, so they had to disclose the fact of, there's this wonderful little mushroom we've been eating for years. It's actually a medicine in our country, and they said that it would give us more energy. We had no idea that it would be illegal, and technically I still laugh because I don't think it wasn't illegal until after they did that. So, but again, cordyceps, these polysaccharides that come away from them, definitively working towards lung health. Definitely something that I would say is great for anybody who feels like they're succumbing to any kind of lung infection, long-standing pneumonia issues, allergy conditions, anything that's really lung determining or degenerative. There is a lot of just fantastic blood circulation capabilities with this. And just think that cordyceps, oxygenation, lung function, really good for boosting the overall activity that your body can go through. chronic rheumatoid arthritis would have a definitive benefit here. Fibromyalgia function would have a benefit here. Low body weight, if you have trouble maintaining body weight. So, cholesterol. Yeah, so definitely one of these where, again, just one of the more interesting ones because it's technically a carnivore mushroom.
What does it taste like?
Kind of like sunflower seeds,
Oh, really?
especially if you eat the whole thing.
So it's okay to eat as much as you want, like throughout the day?
I haven't seen any issues. I finished a couple bags.
It's just about concerned because you're saying it's carnivorous and eats off of dead things like animals. Will the compounds from those things affect the mushroom?
No. It hijacks the live silkworm's body and makes it go to the highest point that it can before it actually grows out of its head and then fruits and produces more of itself. So
Wow.
that's the difference. It's not eating dead things. Most mushrooms eat dead things, but this one actually eats live things.
So could it eat you?
Again, there's actually 4 or 5 really interesting. Yeah, if you come into the office and all of a sudden you've got these interesting little like mushroom horns, then I'll go, you've been eating too much cordyceps. But no, there is actually some conjecture out there to where something like this could be what starts the zombie apocalypse. Because the actual larva stays alive until it finds a particular location, but it's not thinking. There's other types of mushrooms that take over ants and do the same thing. There's some that, yeah.
So it's going to turn me into a zombie?
For a little while, but I mean, as long as you're writing, if you're blogging while that's happening, then I'll at least get to hear like how it feels. But no, it's pretty interesting because again, you got to figure that means these two plants, this plant and this animal, have a very beautiful relationship together to where they can't survive without each other, and they probably do something very, very interesting. And the way these are grown is they literally just have, silkworm farms, and they just put the cordyceps spore inside the population, and it just takes over them all, and they all turn into big guys. So, it's pretty interesting. So I think it's the most, interesting mushroom that we actually eat on a routine basis like this for the overall benefits. But like I say, cordyceps, lungs, oxygenation. Think those together. Anybody who comes to you saying they've got an issue has anything with lung function. Enocatate is a very interesting one. Again, just beginning to be understood. It's much more edible. This is also, I think, known as the king's trumpet. So if anybody who's had what they call a trumpet mushroom, or wait, no, this is not the king's trumpet. This is king's trumpet is the next one. But so looks very similar to the standard shiitakes. Grows up kind of heavy foliage. Really, really good flavor. I like this one a lot. Actually, I'm seeing it more and more in a lot of my high-end Japanese places where I can work on. The big thing that we like about this guy, again, dementia, Alzheimer's, oxygenation, blood cleansing. So it has a very good job at working as a fantastic system for pulling toxicity out of the blood, and therefore alleviating a lot of the oxidative damage and stress on both the liver and the brain. Again, we're kind of hearing the same things, but again, just another version, another source from another mushroom. But this one's just more edible. There's more polysaccharides, proteins and fibers in this one because of the way, the cordyceps, you can tell there's not much to it. You can't really gnaw on a chunk of chaga. You could try to eat reishi, but it would be very difficult. So things like shiitake, maitake, and shiitake are edible, and they actually give you calories, and they also have medicinal compounds in them, kind of similar to like our white button mushrooms or like our birch button mushrooms. And these guys, when you look at them, you've probably seen them before. They're really thin, spindly white. And they have just a tiny little top head on top of them. So they're very common now in a lot of the high-end Asian cuisine.
I think I've seen them at Roots.
Oh, they are at Roots? So
I think I've seen them there.
Good. So I'm glad those are becoming popular because, again, tremendous alkaloids, phycocyanins, which are actually compounds that, again, tell the cells that are supposed to die off time to die. They contain a small molecule of cyanide and a cyanide precursor that actually, again, pops the cell open. So they work in these, very unique ways of improving immune function, and typically very cheap. I think they're not that expensive. So it's one of those where, just like white button mushrooms, chop these things up, put them in your salad, enjoy them, know that you're doing as much as you possibly can that day for being very helpful. Few studies on this, not much, still beginning to kind of get to the place of understanding more of it. I'm sure in 100 years, hopefully there'll be books on all of these individual mushroom compounds and what they do and how they work. So definitely worth getting some of those. And I like the fact that it's starting to become more local. I'm sure like the 88 Ranch probably has those since they're used very commonly in a lot of the Asian cuisine. King's trumpet. A trumpet mushroom looks much more fat-based, big flat top usually. These guys can sometimes grow 2 or 3 feet wide when they're allowed to just grow for a very long time and get a decent age to them. Found very commonly, they are very similar to like our oyster mushroom. But again, this is very unique because of the way it actually grows. Still edible, containing a lot of protein, carbohydrate, fiber. So again, full functioning, great to be sliced, diced, and actually put into foods on a routine basis. But one of the big things about this one is gastrointestinal damage. So when it comes to IBS, gluten intolerance deficiencies, leaky gut condition, whether it's a function of it absorbing compounds or some compound of the polysaccharide family that's in there that stimulates the growth of good tissue inside the intestines, that seems to be one of the bigger ways we're seeing this benefit people. Still has a lot of the other, great ways of reducing oxidation, good for the liver, good for the brain, cellular regeneration. Again, it seems to still have some of these other compounds, but we're noticing that's where the research is kind of dedicated right now. This is one of the few that's actually able to possibly be a diabetic reversal as well too, to where the beta-glucan compounds will specifically focus on pancreatic cells and start to undo diabetic damage or diabetic overburn, which is where most people are when they suffer from low insulin production, high glucose counts inside the bloodstream. So this is definitely one where I would look for people to start enhancing their ability if they're working on their diabetic control for themselves, can really start to see some overall effectiveness. Kind of a lot of the same functions, but we're, again, seeing this to be an edible one, so you're able to find ways of getting these into most of your foods on a day-to-day basis. I think that's the one. This one and cordyceps, I think, are now starting to go into animal feed and working as a natural antimicrobial as well too. It's the way that they normally have to shoot the chicken and turkey and cow and all that with antibiotic. They're finding that when they start blending in, and Paul Stainton, I think, even wrote a book, Agri-Mycology, and talks about using feeds that are based on mushroom mycelium for the fiber carbohydrate fraction that's necessary, but antimicrobial and blood stabilizing for our actual meat production industry. Like I said, when you go through a lot of Stainton's work, there isn't a field out there that, he has mushrooms that actually eat plastic, he has mushrooms that eat through steel, he has mushrooms that literally recycle almost everything out there. One of his best ideas, which I think honestly Amazon should jump on tomorrow, is actually mycelium impregnated cardboard, to where you would get done with whatever the cardboard box you just received in your Amazon package, and you would just set it outside on a place in your lawn, and within 2 days the mushrooms will eat the cardboard and actually start to grow in the area.
No.
The soil will become much more nutrified, and you can then till that into an area and actually have it be more plantable and give off as a better composting agent. So this guy, like I say, has like literally blown the whole. I don't know. I don't know, it just blows me away. Like I say, they've got drones now that deliver Amazon, but they won't go listen to this guy about the cardboard issue.
Mycelium, can you see, like, how deep is it into the earth, and like, is it like a root system?
Some of the myceliums will go 15, 16 feet.
Wow.
And be dormant
Like
for.
an iceberg almost, like, it looks, larger
It's,
than mine.
to you would never notice it. It grows in the actual interstitial pore space of the soil. You would never see the mycelium.
Somebody you can.
Some you can, but very
Looks
rarely.
like a wedding.
Like a web, yeah. And again, it's a neural network. That's the crazy part about it. So where it's funny because they've actually done experiments where they'll put a toxin in one spot, and the actual mycelium will literally pull away from that area and retreat and grow the opposite direction and grow thicker to get away from it. And actually, the whole mycelium will move out of that area if it becomes toxic. It's unreal stuff.
Yeah, I read an article where they talk to each other, like, if they know there's like something going on.
Like forest fires.
They move around.
Yeah, they do.
I'm gonna start putting a bunch of mushroom stuff in my backyard.
Mushrooms help. They help. They do a lot.
So this King's Trumpet, is it readily available?
You can find this at just about any farmer's market with those mushroom guys who show up to the farmer's market. They usually have at least 1 or 2 King's Trumpet every week. And then they are becoming a little more popular in general food stores as well too, organic places. And you can actually, a lot of these, Paul Stainton, if you go onto his website, he'll send you a bag of the growth material for you to start growing your own mushrooms. And that's one of those more amazing things as well too. You can actually have in like a garage or inside like your laundry room, a bag of oyster mushrooms, a bag of King Trumpet, and literally have bags that you just break one off and it'll just keep growing and popping more mushroom out, and you just literally just keep eating.
Can you put them outside?
Depends.
Some in darkness.
Yeah.
Oh, so it doesn't have to be
Temperature
dark.
control.
Temperature control and certain, yeah.
And now our backyard gets hotter than you don't like it in like summer. It'll never work.
But again, it's very funny because these mushroom mycelium and these different, functionality ones are, great things, just as much as having an herb garden or an aloe plant. It'd be great to just have, like I say, a little shelf in your garage that each little bag's growing a particular type of mushroom, and you just go and harvest what you want out of it. So,
Could you do like a greenhouse?
you could.
As long as
Maybe
you
a
darken
dark
it?
And a dark house instead of,
Well, you know what I mean, as long as you darken the.
yeah,
screws
just
in,
put some
yeah.
black tarp around that area,
Yeah.
and or for a lot of people who do greenhousing already, I would just put 1 sheet of black over top of an area and then stow all the mushrooms right underneath the
But
shelf.
you might need it to be temperature controlled.
It just depends.
Especially with the black tarp, which is really hot.
Does it have to be
Well,
cool?
just inside.
Oh, inside, yeah.
Inside.
Does it have to be cool?
That's usually they like around 60 to 70 to 80, somewhere in that temperature range.
But the other thing that's funny is that there's a lot of people who I've seen, just like a root cellar, what they'll do is they'll actually dig clay pots, and then they'll put their growth bags underneath of those clay pots, so terracotta pots, and then they'll just crack a little hole to where they can go in and grab the mushroom out of, so they're underneath the terracotta, which is keeping them more weather isolated. And so I've seen that as well. There's a lot of really cool, and again, Stainton's website, all about the mushroom taking over the world. This guy literally is amazing. Again, I talked a little bit about lion's mane in the beginning because it's one of those where it's just a personal favorite. But there is so much that it can start to do for a person who's really looking for everything from traumatic injury, car accident, neuro damage, spinal cord issues, brain degeneration, anything when it comes to enhancing nervous functionality. Stroke victims, Alzheimer's, dementia, even if you did it to yourself because of long-standing drug use or whatever, and you just lost brain functionality, you've over-toxified those dendrite connections. Again, we've been 40 years now believing that you can't regrow brain cells. So everyone has this concept that, oh, once they're dead, they're dead. We've been told that for decades now. It's not true. You just need to get the right food back in your body, the right minerals and things like lion's mane, and you can regrow anything. Your body is meant to be a self-healing machine. That's the beauty of it. You're not, as much as I don't think they're reliable at all, a Ford or a Chevy that it has to go and buy parts at a particular store in order to bring them and put it back in. Your body will do that work. It just needs the functionality of certain compounds in there for it to actually start to have an effect. So, fibromyalgic pain, huge issue for people who suffer from this on a routine basis, who have this sort of beginning parts are usually almost blown off because you get kind of numbness and neuropathy, meaning you're losing function or you're having areas where they're turning off for a while and you can't use your fingers. The main reason we see is that the skin and the fat cells underneath the skin are becoming over-toxified, that they actually start killing and deadening the actual nervous structure. Even though we've seen the picture of our nervous system on the charts, we don't understand that out of every area where the nerve fibers are growing, there are tiny little pin size, 2 to 3 nanometer thick nerve fibers that go in to create that extra sensation that we need in order to have a fully functioning skin system, a fully functional organ system. Again, the nervous system is everywhere. It's the communication network. And we find, when you look at lion's mane, the interesting piece about it is it kind of looks like a really shaggy, big, beautiful dog. It's like a white dog. And it just grows, and you pull the pieces off, and then that's where we grind that into that powder. It is another tree saprophyte, so it's actually living off the living water from the tree. And it's, again, just one of these to where so many compounds, so little research, not given anywhere near its credit. Not like reishi, where it's just been studied over and over again, or chaga even, it's been studied pretty extensively, and yet this one has so many great potential for that nerve regeneration, nerve growth factors to come back into the body. Does actually pass through the blood-brain barrier. Most compounds don't. So that's a huge piece when we know, obviously, then if the blood-brain barrier says okay to lion's mane, then there's a reason for it, because most of everything you eat doesn't go through the blood-brain barrier. So obviously there's something about lion's mane mushroom in our bodies that say, oh yeah, bring that in. Come on, let's go ahead and get that in here. It's going to help. So definitely a part of our system here that we really want to see coming into, and I just don't know anybody out there who hasn't come up to me and said, yeah, I've got problems remembering whatever, and they what do I do? Immediate lion's mane mushroom. Start there. We can work on a lot past that. But the lion's mane is definitely, think of it as nerve function, nerve regeneration, nerve capabilities.
So where do you get it?
Again, you can get lion's mane from a lot of different online sources. It's in our immunity matrix, so it's there. I would love to start carrying some more. We might actually be developing a new nootropic MSM blend that actually has lion's mane into it as a bigger component, with some other compounds, to where we can get a little more of a brain and nerve health tonic, using the anti-inflammatory vehicle and the acceptance donor for the methylation cofactors of the MSM. But even if you'd like to email someone here and you say, oh, I'd like half a pound or a pound or whatever, we can try to find a way to get more to you on anything that you're requesting specifically. Maitake, again, delicious. Works really well for a lot of our overall digestive function. Fantastic for the heart system. These can be eaten straight, fresh, raw. They're very soft, very chewy. There's no real necessity to actually cook them overly. But it is kind of one of these things where you can grow your own. They're usually found in stores. Their mushroom dealers are all the way. Typically having some maitakes, they're usually in these little kind of rosette clusters. They're starting to be used in cancer research, not very excessively, but it is one of those to where I hope that we start seeing it used more frequently, especially when we start to notice that there's no technical stage of cancer, just abnormal cells, fibroids, any type of growth factors that are occurring. All of these mushrooms are shown to actually do certain operations, but there is that big benefit for blood sugar, for colon, intestines, for the heart system, and I do hope that people, again, start at least eating these on a routine basis, because that's, I think, the better way to go about finding the system to get mushrooms back in the body. So love my talking, but they're working. They're definitely there. They work a lot for some good functionalities, but just now being studied. That's the other big interesting issue about a lot of these things, is that they're just now starting to get into a lot of the study work. Turkey tail. Turkey tail, I would say, is one of the big up-and-comers on the information that's coming out regarding medicinal mushrooms, and I think this might be the one that actually will, I don't know, it might be the Lindsay Lohan or the Paris Hilton of mushrooms, because at least it's going to get a lot of coverage in the way that it's being used nowadays, because it's in every clinical trial for breast cancer, colon cancer, stomach cancer, bone cancer, brain cancer. They're using turkey tail to see where it has its best benefits. There's a ton of different extract styles, different growth factors. Again, one of the interesting things about turkey tail, it's called that because of the fact that it has such a range and vibrancy colors, and each little floweret of the mushroom kind of grows in a span, just like an open turkey tail. So it's got all these color bandings, and each color, of course, has different compounds in them. So the green ones are different than anything that's yellow or red. That's different than anything that's orange or black. Each of those different compounds make a different color, and each color represents different polysaccharides and different phenols and different terpenes before we can actually get into understanding them. And it's just one of those where I'm still just hoping more work that's done. Definitely going to be a big piece in the fight against cancer in the next 100 years, because I think the big scam of chemotherapy is going to get blown open. Doesn't work, regularly fails, causes more damage. Turkey tail has nothing but other alternative health benefits with the consumption of it, and the overconsumption of it actually means that typically we're getting bigger amounts of effects in terms of body balancing. Again, antihypertensive, anti-inflammatory, working in all areas of the liver function, kidney function. We're seeing it contain the ability to actually filter the blood. One of the few mushrooms we've actually been able to find that does that operation, different than most of the other ones. So if there is a blood-borne issue, it's actually able to do some stabilization in that factor instead of working on certain organs. Oh man, again, it's one of these where I love the fact that a lot of times I was literally dealing with, I probably have 70 pages of different websites and different research and different things that are going into all these. There's a lot of TED Talks, again, Paul Stamets, I guess it's S-T-A-M-E-T-S, sorry. S-T-A-M-E-T-S.
Yeah, his name's on here several times.
Yeah, he's everywhere when it comes to mushrooms. So, heavy metals, does a fantastic job of pulling them out of the blood. Cellular toxicity, if you're having liver failure, if you're experiencing kidney failure, turkey tail has benefits. So dialysis people need to be on this. Again, if you've had leaky gut syndrome, where you've been leaching toxic compounds into the bloodstream, I don't know if I have found a study that's been done on the turkey tail that hasn't developed or shown benefit to the people, the clinical trial people taking the mushroom. So it's another one of those to where it seems like it kind of works on all levels of the body, such a different radical change, and we're seeing health benefits to the people in the clinical trials, where even if their initiating issue for being in the trial is not directly healed, their body actually heals and starts becoming healthier at the end. So cholesterol levels drop, high blood pressure goes away, diabetic conditions go away. All those things started and then they end the trial, and a lot of times you don't really know, well, where did that person's eventual healing happen? Did it happen after the fact? Did they stay on the turkey tail? We still aren't seeing a lot of these studies go past 6 months to a year. So it'd be great for someone to finally do a multi-year, multinational studies as well too. But we just need more work in these areas. We need more people who are mycologists and geneticists at the same time to understand the relationships here and to see what we can do to get into better overall operation. Last but not least, shiitakes. Easy to grow, easy to eat, delicious raw, fantastic dried, great grilled. They are awesome sauteed in butter. The big thing again here is that we see a lot of these polysaccharide compounds that definitely benefit the functionality of the immune system. They are easy to be absorbed into the human body. Great to be grown on a routine basis in your home. These ones are actually very interesting because you can grow them, and what they'll do is they'll send you a log with pre-drilled holes, and each one has a grouping of shiitake seeds inside there, and each little spot turns out to be one or two little pops of the shiitake. So it's I think one of those fun ones. I'm gonna probably order one just so I can show my boys how this works. But it is one of those fun things where potassium, a little higher, good protein, good fiber, good calcium, magnesium, basic food, regulates blood sugar, regulates cholesterol levels, fantastic for chronic fatigue syndrome, fibroid issues. We see it, again, working very well as, again, a part of the daily diet. That's one of those unique things about the mushrooms that we've been talking about, all adaptogenic, all good for you on a routine basis. You don't have to cycle. You don't have to not eat them. You can eat them in larger doses and then come back down to smaller doses. But it's one of those where eat them, be consistent with eating them, especially if you're suffering from some type of body dysfunction. We really want people to understand, and I want more success stories of people going, oh yeah, I started, listening to you the other day, and I ate, 2 pounds of shiitake, and now all of a sudden I've got no cholesterol issue, better blood pressure, better glucose levels, and all of that starting to be beneficial. So I just, again, hope that today what we accomplished in going through the mushrooms of the Superfood Academy is your ability to hone in on maybe 1 or 2 that seem like they'll have some big function and some big benefit for you. No one can go wrong with reishi, chaga, cordyceps. I mean, if you like the individual specific operation of any of those, but also the ones we talked about that are much more on the edible range, just be getting good mushrooms in the body on a routine basis.
Variety.
A variety, yeah, of course. Variety is the spice of life. And if you can go out and harvest your own, just be very careful. Yeah, I don't want anybody saying, oh, I talked to that Joe guy, and he said to go and eat mushrooms when I found them. So I walked right into a forest and just started eating. So next week, we're going to start on the herbs and getting the herbal levels of our final piece. Again, I say that there's a lot of magic in these mushrooms because of what they can do and where we see them going. The herbs are, again, I'd say another place where very few people come in here going, really, I eat some turmeric, I'm going to have a better heart condition or a better brain condition. You're really, yeah, okay, I guess I'll have to trust you on this one. I love that line. Oh, I guess I'll trust you on this one. And then they come back a week later going, man, I had no idea it was that easy. I just had to eat some turmeric. Now my joints feel better, my stomach feels better, my brain feels better. I just love the fact that there is so much power to all of these different little compounds in each of these little bags and what they do and how they work. That I just, again, I love the fact I'm getting the opportunity to sit here and share and go through these details. Tomorrow is the GMO talk, so big, powerful speech that I'll definitely get up on my soapbox and talk a lot about some really crazy stuff that's going on these days. And then this weekend, here in Temecula, and technically all over the world, you can find your local GMO March Against Monsanto. So everywhere is going to be doing at least something. Try to get to something if you can. Honk your horn, do whatever you can. Like I say, we've been 2.5 years, I think, and we are up to almost 800 cities on the global march. So we're trying to really exacerbate that. I will continue to, like I say, keep processing the video and getting them set up to where everyone can review these. I'll have to check. I might have lost the berry or the food one. I'll have to see because I know that I had an issue last week where at the end it may not have saved. But I'll see what I can do. The YouTube thing worked okay this time. I don't know what happened there. So it could be actually working this whole time, and then it'll be right there on the screen when I get done. So we'll do that, and I'll make sure. Because in the end, I'll probably have all these different weeks again coming over in a PDF electronic version as well too for everybody.
Okay.
So you'll be able to kind of help.
And you can save them on your computer that way.
Yeah, makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah.
So-
Magnify your computer work.
I know the small print you get, air. I
Yeah.
wanna buy some of those Lunchables.
Okay, definitely.
Cause they already have the Rishi and the, wild chocolate.
Yeah.
I love sunflower seeds.